Near the close of the year 2015, amid a state of high alert for terror attacks, world leaders gathered in Paris to discuss climate change at COP21, the 21st Annual Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
C'est un jour historique.
This international meeting adopted the Paris Agreement, a new framework in which all countries, including developing countries, will tackle climate change starting in 2020. Efforts will be made to hold global temperatures down to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial revolution level. Greenhouse gas emissions will be eliminated in the second half of this century. And all countries will advance policies such as setting targets every 5 years for reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
The new international agreement reached at COP21 in Paris is an epoch-making step towards taking effective actions to tackle climate change. What is important now is how to implement this new mechanism agreed upon by the global community. As the implementing agency of Japan's ODA, JICA's role will be to proactively contribute to this global endeavor.
Among its various activities, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, provides official development assistance in the area of climate change. It does this in the form of technical and financial cooperation that targets the needs of developing countries.
JICA will support measures to tackle climate change in developing countries according to 3 principles. First, integrating climate change aspects into social economic development. For this purpose, for example, we developed climate change screening tool. Second, providing comprehensive assistance. We will utilize our schemes including technical cooperation, grant and concessional loans, or private sector financing. Third, building partnership with development and climate institutions. We will try to achieve more effective results through such partnership.
How does Japan aid developing countries in the area of climate change? In Vietnam, JICA's initiatives include fighting salination, promoting energy conservation, and protecting forests. Let's look at these 3 examples. Vietnam has a population of about 90 million. Over the 10 years following 2000, it enjoyed annual economic growth of more than 7%. The standard of living rose dramatically. But now, Vietnam is being affected by climate change in a number of ways. The Mekong Delta in southern Vietnam. About 18 million people, around 1/5 of the country's population, live in this region, and it produces more than half of the country's food. However, it is being affected by the rise in sea levels associated with global warming. Seawater is intruding into farmland. The resulting salt damage hinders agriculture. So JICA provided support to Vietnam's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development and Southern Institute of Water Resources. Together, they formulated a development plan for sustainable rural communities that accounts for the predicted effects of climate change in the Mekong Delta. Ben Tre Province is located in the southwestern Mekong Delta. Inhabitants depend on the Mekong as a source of water for agriculture and everyday use. However, saline water intrusion has reached their farmland. The region has many coconut plantations and citrus orchards. These crops are very sensitive to salt, and as a result of saline water intrusion, the region has problems such as shrinking harvests and smaller fruit.
I'm very worried about damage to farmland by saline water intrusion
Every year the sea level rises and our crops suffer salt damage. Our citrus trees are dying off. We need fresh water to grow crops and to live.
In 2012, Vietnam's Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment made an environmental forecast through the year 2020. It stated that if sea levels rose 1 meter, Bến Tre province would be entirely surrounded by seawater. In the face of that danger, Bến Tre province is working with many non-governmental organizations to secure water supplies needed for farming and living. Our current projects focus on the northern and southern parts of the province.
Given this situation, the Vietnamese authorities requested assistance in installing sluice gates in several locations. The aim is to prevent saltwater backflow up the Mekong River from infiltrating farmland. In response to the request, JICA is carrying out a feasibility study, which includes the data collection and analysis needed for installing the sluice gates. The study also includes detailed surveys of marine ecosystems to assess whether construction would have environmental impacts.
Part of JICA's support is for building sluices, but it also includes technical cooperation in the monitoring of how far salt intrusion has advanced. We are analyzing the data we collect to determine how the sluices should operate. Agricultural cooperation includes introducing new crop varieties, and it also includes measures to prevent spreading of disease in shrimp aquaculture. And in addition, since there are many fruit farmers, technical support will also be needed for fruit growing.
Vietnam's rapid economic growth in recent years has been accompanied by growing energy consumption. This has spurred the need for more efficient energy usage. The government of Vietnam passed the Law on Energy Efficiency and Conservation in 2011. This legislation provided for the creation of a specialized training center for the energy management of factories and commercial buildings. Vietnam asked for Japan's assistance in starting the center. JICA is currently helping to carry out this Establishment of Energy Management Training Center project. It develops curricula and textbooks and provides equipment. The project is also preparing the instructors who will run the training programs.
Over the past 3 years, Ho Chi Minh City has been able to send trainees to Japan each year. This is thanks to JICA's support. The founding of the Energy Conservation Center means that we no longer need to dispatch trainees to distant places. We can educate trainees from all over southern Vietnam right here in Ho Chi Minh City.
In the forested regions of northwestern Vietnam, much of the population is made up of ethnic minorities living in poverty. Due to a lack of proper management, the amount of natural forest is shrinking, and its health and biodiversity are being degraded. JICA is thus providing support to conserve and restore northwestern Vietnam's plantations and natural forests. The aim is to reduce CO2 emissions and enhance carbon sink functions while improving livelihoods in the region. A range of technologies is being developed and distributed with JICA's help.
People in the region, especially ethnic minorities, have obtained all kinds of life necessities from the natural forests for generations. So we need to work alongside them, and we need to do it wisely. We must improve their livelihoods using various approaches. For example, by introducing livestock raising and highly productive farming techniques. We want to reduce how much timber is consumed for firewood. So maybe biogas from livestock manure could be used for boiling water instead of wood. Meanwhile, not all of the land here is suitable for farming. On unproductive land, we certainly want to pursue reforestation to restore the forest cover. But in the medium to long term, we want inhabitants to be able to harvest lumber from their forests to supplement their incomes through forestry. We're working to implement those types of concepts for forest conservation and creation.
We spoke with a Vietnamese official about the country's future climate change policies.
Japan is a country that Vietnam needs to learn from. I look forward to drawing on the advice of Japanese experts about the best way to implement and enforce regulations. And I would like to know more about the best way to create regulations. These are regulations that need to be formulated to mandate that various companies and organizations reduce their greenhouse gas emissions.
JICA has a thriving development assistance effort in Indonesia. Here we discuss initiatives to prevent coast erosion, develop CO2 sequestration technologies, restore mangrove forest, and pursue geothermal power generation. With approximately 250 million people, Indonesia is the most populous country in Southeast Asia, as well as the largest in land area. It has enjoyed steady growth in recent years, and as the only Southeast Asian member of the G20 group of nations, it has a prominent position in the international community. But Indonesia suffers from frequent natural disasters, foremost among them the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami. Disasters of various kinds have cost many lives. Indonesia is also affected by climate change. Dry season water shortages are getting longer, and rainy season flooding due to sedimentation is getting more frequent. The toll from such natural disasters rises each year. To combat this, in 2009, the government of Indonesia became a trailblazer among developing countries by setting targets for reduced greenhouse gas emissions. It announced that by 2020 it would cut emissions by 26%, compared to a baseline without climate change measures.
Indonesia is working to reduce our future greenhouse gas emissions. We must achieve a 26% cut by 2020. With our current rate of progress, we have already achieved 15%. That is according to a 2015 interim report. So I believe that it will be possible to hit our target by the end of 2020.
Bali is called the Island of Gods. It has a rich and unique traditional culture, and about 90% of the population follows Balinese Hinduism. Thanks to its beautiful beaches, Bali has become a celebrated resort destination. Since the 1970s, however, exploitation of coral reefs and rapid urbanization, along with climate change, have triggered serious coastal erosion. Many beaches vital to the tourism industry lost large amounts of sand, leading to negative economic impacts. In 1996, JICA began offering international cooperation to protect Bali's coasts and restore scenic beauty. Tanah Lot is a famous Hindu temple erected in the 16th century. The temple stands on top of a rock formation about 50 meters offshore. At low tide, it can be reached by land. Its picturesque silhouette at sunset has an exotic charm that draws huge numbers of tourists from around the world. There were worries that coastal erosion could cause the loss of this treasured tourist attraction. So a JICA project constructed submerged breakwaters that would not interfere with the scenic views. More than 7,000 concrete blocks were also placed out at sea to form an artificial reef that dissipates wave action and prevents erosion.
Since the blocks are placed out at sea, they don't affect the view. They are barely visible even at low tide, and they work well to dissipate the energy of waves. Tanah Lot is a very sacred place for us. So we are especially grateful to Japan for their financial assistance. They have helped us to ensure the conservation of the island.
This is Sanur Beach. It was one of the earliest resort areas to be established on Bali. But it began suffering severe erosion. So JICA installed breakwaters and carried out large-scale sand replenishment, restoring Sanur Beach's appeal.
Thanks to all the civil engineering work, the situation has really improved. Most of all, the beach simply looks much better. There is sand now in places where all the sand had previously been washed away. Since the project's completion, we have been blessed with thriving tourism. The number of visitors has definitely grown. Sales of tickets to Tanah Lot are up by 50%.
If you include the country's peatlands, fast-growing Indonesia is the world's third largest emitter of greenhouse gases after China and the US. This is the Bandung Institute of Technology. Groundbreaking research is being carried out here in cooperation with Kyoto University and other Japanese institutions. The research studies carbon capture and storage, or CCS, how to recover CO2 and sequester it underground. JICA and JST, the Japan Science and Technology Agency, are supporting the research project under SATRIPS, the Science and Technology Research Partnership for Sustainable Development. The study is taking place at the Gundi gas field in central Java. There, fundamental technologies needed for CCS are being developed, including assessment tools of geological formations for sequestration potential and monitoring.
Currently, CO2 is released into the atmosphere during oil and gas production by flaring. We want to use this new technology to capture CO2 and store it, reducing the amount that is emitted. But suitable storage formations are usually more than a kilometer underground. And in our search, we have not yet been able to find just the right place for CO2 storage. Despite the difficulties, we are continuing our efforts unabated. The challenges do not worry us. Whenever you try to do something new, it always requires persistence.
Indonesia is home to the world's largest mangrove forests. These precious ecosystems, which act as carbon sinks, thrive in brackish tidal waters where fresh water meets the sea. But the mangrove forests are shrinking each year. JICA is supporting the establishment of mangrove management centers, which can play a role in ecosystem conservation and reduce damage from flooding and storms. Indonesia, rich in volcanoes, has the potential to become one of the world's greatest producers of geothermal power. The country's government has established a target of obtaining 17% of its energy from renewable sources by 2025, of which 5% is expected to come from geothermal. JICA is providing financial assistance and advice on obtaining private sector capital for construction of geothermal plants. Japan is involved in supporting many projects around the world in the area of climate change. In the African nation of Senegal, sea level rises due to climate change have caused serious salination damage. JICA has cooperated on building infrastructure such as breakwaters and helped with efforts to spread knowledge of techniques for limiting soil degradation. Since the 1970s, satellite imaging has been used in conservation efforts in Brazil to monitor illegal logging of the Amazon rainforest. But thick clouds, which cover the forests for nearly 5 months a year, have limited the information that can be obtained. With the cooperation of JAXA, Japan's aerospace agency, JICA used the ALOS satellite to create a system which can detect ground conditions regardless of cloud coverage. Information on illegal logging obtained this way has been used to strengthen oversight of forests. At COP21, JICA and JAXA announced the Initiative for Improvement of Forest Governance, under which ALOS 2 will be used to monitor where tropical forests are shrinking. This should aid in long-term forest conservation policy. JICA is also cooperating in implementation of RED+, which aims to reduce the CO2 emissions of developing countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America by promoting sustainable forest management. Emissions from car usage growing around the world are also contributing to global warming. This makes improved public transport a priority. In New Delhi, India's capital, JICA is supporting the construction of a 103-kilometer-long high-speed mass transit system. Since emissions from rail transport are lower than those from automobiles, JICA's financial assistance for subway construction is contributing to reductions in greenhouse gases. Japanese municipal governments are also doing their part to help developing countries tackle climate change by lending their accumulated insight and expertise. The city of Yokohama, adjacent to Tokyo, has 3.7 million people. Yokohama has overcome many urban problems in its history: pollution, waste, traffic jams, and more. Now it is seeking to reduce its carbon footprint. The city has a program to install solar panels on public buildings. A car-sharing system is being used to expand the use of electric vehicles. A growing number of Yokohama citizens have easy access to electric vehicles. In cooperation with local companies being supported by Japan's national government, the city of Yokohama is transferring technologies and expertise to developing countries. One example is Yokohama's cooperation with the Bangkok Metropolitan Administration on urban development that combats climate change.
Yokohama's master plan for addressing climate change was built up on the basis of what would best suit Yokohama. As the guideline on this end was not provided explicitly by the national government, the city had to devise its own plan. Bangkok is in the same situation. It must build up its own expertise in grappling with climate change. I believe that Yokohama can serve as a benchmark for a unique Bangkok solution. It's not about cutting-edge technology or the most technically advanced solution. It's about what works best for Bangkok. We in the local government and firms in Yokohama have undertaken a wide range of consultation with the Bangkok government and local private firms. This has enabled us to provide them with the best available solution, not necessarily the most advanced technologies.
JICA regularly invites guests, such as officials and engineers from developing countries, to come to Japan for training programs in the field of climate change policy. The training takes place at JICA's Kyushu International Center. Public officials involved in environmental policy in places like Asia and Central America are studying policy planning for energy efficiency and conservation. Trainees spend a month learning about Japan's most advanced environmental technologies and policies.
This is a nice program because the training program, the policy planning for energy efficiency and conservation, is totally related to my job because I am the Assistant Director of Energy Efficiency, and the course curriculum and course content is very relevant for energy efficiency.
In 2014, climate change funds invested by industrialized countries and developing countries amounted to $62 billion. Of that, Japan provided roughly $8 billion, more than 12% of the global total. At COP21, Japan committed another $10.5 billion through 2020 to strengthen international cooperation on this issue.
All 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the United Nations relate to climate change in one way or another. Climate change poses a serious threat to the stability and prosperity of the global society. It is each and everyone's responsibility to join forces to overcome this common challenge. It is necessary to assess every economic and social activity through a climate change lens so as to take appropriate adaptation measures. Notably, the international community should pay particular attention to vulnerable countries and to the people who will be most impacted by the effects of climate change. At the same time, it is also critical to create a new type of society that is less dependent on fossil fuels and emits less greenhouse gases. To achieve this, it is increasingly pressing that we adapt our lifestyles and consciousness as well as leverage technological gains. JICA will contribute to the sustainable development of developing countries by taking advantage of technologies and human resources fostered through Japan's own experience. We have valuable lessons to share regarding promoting environmental conservation and disaster risk reduction. I believe that engaging in efforts like these will work towards creating a more stable and prosperous global society.
Japan intends to make greater efforts than ever to ensure that the COP21 agreement is fully implemented. This program was made possible by Japan International Cooperation Agency.